Before I open up the floor to some questions, I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to let all three of our speakers have a go at it. Dr. Ramzy just a moment ago talked about the fact that the Egyptians don't want the democracy that has been left behind in Iraq or Libya or Syria, though obviously it's a moot point how one arrives at the conclusion of what Egyptian people want in any given situation. I think it would be interesting to ask each person, and seriously, if the argument is that these kinds of democracy are a synonym for chaos, does Egypt need democracy at all? If we argue that a strong state with a strong military can protect the rights of minorities or women or the nation's boundaries or national security, then what is the argument for democracy? Why is democracy necessary in the first place? Professor Camilleri.
Well, there's a lot of glib talk about democracy. I happen to be one of those who think that the likes of Britain, Australia and the United States are not terribly democratic. Not very democratic at all. So democracy is really an aspiration and a goal, not well understood by many people, and at best it's something that you begin to move towards and approximate and hopefully improve as time goes on. So in the case of a country like Egypt, I think it is a legitimate aspiration to move towards a system of government, a system by which the affairs of society are organized in ways that are genuinely inclusive of all the key groups represented within that society. And that's fundamentally what democracy is about. You have then the question that this cannot then be purely majoritarian rule. Yes, you might have a number of decisions and forums to be addressed. Now, in my view, that's integral to any serious move towards a more democratic society. So all of these are interconnected questions. And the final point I'd make, if I may, very quickly, and the way you move towards a more democratic society, the way you do it must itself foreshadow democratic processes. Because you're not going to go and get a democratic society by authoritarian means. It doesn't work. It's a legitimate goal, it needs time, and in a sense the goal is never achieved. You have to constantly strive for better.
Dr. Ramzy.
Can't differ really much about the need for democracy for every country and everyone. However, the application of this really differ greatly from one place to the other, depending on a lot of things. But I think democracy needs to go hand in hand with strong and applicable law to protect the rights of everyone. And that is, in my opinion, more important for our countries than anything else. You need to have law and order, you need to have laws that are applied, because this is what prevents anyone from passing that point and interfering with my own freedom and my own right. Once he passes limits, then law has to be applied. And that is really very important. This is not something that can be happening in a chaotic environment, like or similar to the environment that Egypt is going through now. But I think Egyptians hold high hopes for a time where there is peace and democracy, which include everyone, as long as everyone is applied to the rules of the game.
Can I make a small point here, which is when you talked a minute ago about the suspicions that exist regarding the ousted president of the country, you talked about the fact that he was in jail. And I agree with you. I think that the rule of law in states is extremely important. But I think that the problem is that in a democracy there's an interaction between the democratic process and the legal process. In what was not a democracy before 2011, for 30 years, lots of people went to jail for reasons that wouldn't stand up in a democratic society. And that creates a problem because there's a whole class of people in Egyptian life who've been in jail, often for no good reason at all. So it seems to me that, I mean, we know that the first initial candidate of the Muslim Brotherhood for the presidency was also disqualified on the basis that he had been in jail. But lots of people in Egypt have been in jail. The problem to me is that when you talk about the rule of law, it's also necessary to understand that the rule of law can be abusive in a stable environment as well as in a chaotic environment if the stable environment is not democratic.
Well, I'm talking about just laws. Okay?
Yeah.
The just laws.
But what I'm asking you is, can there be just law under a dictatorship?
Very difficult, of course. I don't think there was a real democracy during Mubarak or during the military rule in the interim period, and definitely there was no democracy during Morsi's time.
Okay.
And I can, justify.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's your perspective. Now, okay, so we come to the summary. Why does Egypt need democracy, Adel?
It has no choice, in reality. But I would just make a couple of comments before I give you the full answer. Firstly, and just pick up the point that you've just made, the rule of law, or laws, not the rule of law, but laws in the hands of dictators is called tyranny. So let's just be very clear. Laws in the hands of dictators means tyranny. So it's not enough to say we want the rule of law. It depends who is controlling the laws and the application of those laws. The other thing I'll say is that democracy is not brought about by military coup. And I challenge anyone in the room, and it's a sincere challenge, I challenge anyone in this room to actually point to one single example where a military coup, a military takeover, has actually caused the flowering of democracy in the country. Democracy can follow military coups, but it's not caused by military coups. It takes generations for actual democracy. You just have to look at Southeast Asia, South America, Europe, and democracies have taken root and have flourished, even though they've had a long history of military coups and military repression. But the military coup repression did not cause democracy to flourish. Why do I say that Egypt has no choice? Well, if you look at the world today, and you look at all of those societies where there is respect for human rights, there's the basic rights of citizens and citizenship. There is genuine rule of law. There is an allowance for plurality of voices, economic progress and minimum standards of living, and generally stable governance and progress being made. What do they all have in common? Without exception. Again, I challenge anyone here to actually tell me one example of a country that fits all of those criteria that they do not have some form of a democratic system. There isn't. So democracy is required for human rights, the rule of law, plurality of voices to be heard, stable systems of governance, economic progress, basic standards of living. And there are many other things as well, but they're some of the main things. And obviously a free and independent media, etc., etc., etc. Democracy does not mean ballot box. It doesn't mean elections every 3 or 4 years. That's only one small part. That goes to the issue of orderly and peaceful transfer of power in a civilian framework. That's what the ballot box means. And obviously, a robust political system allows for a multiplicity of voices and political parties and for everyone to participate. But a true democracy requires very strong building blocks, including very strong civil institutions, which Egypt does not have. Does not have by any measure. Egypt does not have a free and independent media now. It did at the time of Morsi. It definitely did not at the time of Mubarak, but it had that during the time of Morsi. And the proof of that is that he, his family, his party were mercilessly vilified, ridiculed, attacked, and none of them were thrown in jail. None of them were taken off air, etc., etc. So Egypt has no choice, because the building blocks of a democratic country are those same building blocks that actually mean progress and fairness and some level of citizenship and participation in the future of the country.
Okay, can I just add something on that? In response, I mean, it's all good, really, us sitting and enjoying this environment to talk about democracy. But what do the people of Egypt really need? Okay? I really think that Egyptians today, in every day of their life, they are after security, safety. He wants to be able to get to work and back without being worried or afraid. He wants his children to go to school and come back to school well and safe. They don't have that. Democracy is a luxury that people are not looking for now. People like us sitting in this air-conditioned room, we can talk about it. People want safety first, security first, bread first, and then democracy. There is no problem at all in both happening together. That's the ideal situation. But that is not going to happen in an environment that is happening or occurring in Egypt now, where the people feel terrorized. This is not going to happen and delay the process of democracy in my view.
All right, now, bearing in mind those comments, what we're going to do is I'm going to throw open the floor for questions. Now, please understand, if the direction of questions goes too much to one person, I will ask for questions specifically for other people, or I will ask questions of those people. I will decide the order of the questions, and if I feel you're going on, I will cut you off. Bil-asaf al-shadid. Okay? So, now, put up your hands if you would like to ask a question. Okay. No. Keep your hands up for a moment, please. Keep your hands up for a moment. Okay, we'll start with this gentleman here with the green shirt, please.
Maybe I'll just try to. My name is Ahmed Khalid. I'll start from Adel. There are lots of interesting points, but what Adel mentioned about the role of religious groups, both Muslims and Christians in Egypt, being the two major religions, in representing the moral voice in the country. One of the things that I really, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment.
Now you're in trouble.
It's basically that how religion, both two religions, have been abused, in my opinion, in the past 2 years and a half since the revolution, by both groups in both directions that really misrepresent the religion in terms of the actual, where you draw the line between politics and religion. Both, in my opinion, Muslim Brotherhood, they were, and generally Islamists, they were kind of mixing, intentionally or unintentionally, religion with politics, which really led to major problems in this society. And on the other hand, the most formal body of Christians in Egypt, which is the church, the Orthodox Church, have been taking obvious political stance, being the church.
Okay.
So yeah, basically those two things that.
Okay, Ahmed, I think I can turn this into a question. Okay. I'll address it both to Magdy and to Adel, but first Adel. Adel, you know and I know that one of the major slogans of the Brotherhood is Al-Islam wal-Hal. Okay? Now this is a slogan which implicitly links political solutions to a religious position. Do you think that's really helpful in an environment like the environment of Egypt today?
I don't think the premise is correct, if I could.
Okay, go ahead, please. Correct me.
The slogan principle that the Ikhwan have, and many other Muslims have, that you don't have to be a member of the Brotherhood to believe, if you're a practicing Muslim, as many people are, they strongly have the view that Islam is the solution. Absolutely. Islam is meant to be a whole way of life. And I am a practicing Muslim, and I believe that.
Yes. And
I'm not a member of the Ikhwan, and I'm not involved in Egyptian politics. The Muslim Brotherhood do see the Masdar, the source of guidance, being Islam. And that is their ideology. And it's great to have an ideology. What's bad is where you don't allow for other people to have their own ideologies and to differ with you. And the Ikhwan took a decision many decades ago that they would participate in the country's political system in a peaceful way. That means they have to allow for other voices. Yes, they haven't changed their view. Islam is the solution. It doesn't mean they believe in an Iranian-style theocracy or a false Islamic state such as exists in Saudi Arabia, which is as far removed from Islamic state as is possible. They don't believe in that, but they do look to Islam as the source of their guidance and their manhaj, which is their program. But that does not mean they exclude other viewpoints. And the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood took a decision, right or wrong, and I'm picking up a point that Ahmed made, they took a decision after the January 25 revolution to actually participate. They were very successful in parliamentary elections. They were supporting of the constitution, the revised constitution, which was voted upon and endorsed by 64% of the population. And they endorsed that. And they saw that there was an opportunity for them to actually play a further role, which is in the role of the executive in terms of the presidency. And so they put candidates forward. But if you look at the rule of Morsi, and I'll challenge Dr. Magdy on this politely, it was not a dictatorship by any means. Not by any means. And I'll ask Dr. Magdy if we have time to actually point to specific examples of where the Morsi government was a dictatorship and did oppress the people as existed prior, during the military's rule, the SCAF, and obviously during the Mubarak.
Well, we can come to that. We can come to that in due course. I think it's very interesting, just as a side note. I mean, obviously that slogan, Al-Islam Huwa al-Hal, it has a definite article in it, so it's not that it's a solution, it's the solution.
I need to reflect very quickly on the question and the answer. I think it's...
No, because, because for you, wait a minute, for you the question is going to be subtly different, okay? All right? For Adel, the question was about the Brotherhood, okay? For you the question is, how does it help Copts when a general moves in to depose an elected government for their Pope to appear next to the general at a press conference?
Very clever, but I don't think it works.
Well, I'm asking you questions here.